The most dangerous lies are the ones you want to believe. And for 6 beautiful, sun-drenched months, I believed the lie my sister was living. I believed in her supportive smiles, her enthusiastic toasts, and her happy tears. I believed she was my maid of honor. But she wasn't. She was a predator, waiting in the tall grass of my own happiness, and I had just handed her the keys to the cage where my heart was kept. If you believe that betrayal always comes back to haunt the betrayer, and that the sweetest revenge is the kind they never see coming, then you're going to want to hear this. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because the story I'm about to tell you is a testament to the fact that sometimes the best way to win the war is to let your enemy hand you the ammunition, one mistake at a time. Part 1. The Gilded Cage. It all started, as these things so often do, with a ring. It wasn't ostentatious. It was a simple, elegant sapphire, the color of the late evening sky, flanked by 2 small diamonds that glittered like the first stars of twilight. It was perfect. Daniel had presented it to me on a bluff overlooking the lake we'd grown up on, the water shimmering below us like a scattered handful of jewels. He'd quoted a line from a poem I loved, his voice thick with an emotion I was certain was genuine love. In that moment, the world narrowed to the 2 of us, a perfect, unshakable universe. Daniel was everything. He was the kind of man who listened not just to your words, but to the silences in between. He remembered the name of my childhood dog, the fact that I hated cilantro, and the way I always needed a cup of tea before I could face the world in the morning. He was solid, dependable. He was my future, neatly packaged in a 6'2" frame with kind eyes and a laugh that could make any room feel like home. Bringing him home to meet my family felt like the final, perfect piece of the puzzle clicking into place. My parents adored him instantly. My dad saw a fellow sports enthusiast. My mom saw a man who looked at her daughter like she was the only person on earth. And then there was Rachel, my sister. She was 2 years younger, but in many ways, she'd always felt older. More worldly, more predatory. Growing up, she was the beautiful one, the charming one. I was the smart one, the quiet one. Our parents called us the poet and the panther. I found solace in books. She found it in attention. Any attention. But she was my sister, my only sister, and the bond between us felt, to me at least, like something sacred and unbreakable. The night I introduced them, my mom had cooked her famous roast chicken. The house was filled with the scent of rosemary and thyme, the clinking of wine glasses, and the low hum of happy conversation. I remember watching Rachel across the table. She was wearing a crimson dress that made her stand out against the warm, earthy tones of our dining room. When I held up my hand to show her the ring, her eyes widened and a smile stretched across her perfectly painted lips. "Oh, Liv," she exclaimed, her voice a pitch higher than usual. She rushed around the table and enveloped me in a hug that felt just a little too tight, her nails digging slightly into my back. "It's stunning. He's perfect. I am so happy for you." She pulled away and turned that dazzling smile on Daniel. "Welcome to the family, Daniel. You better take good care of my big sister." "I plan on it," he said, his own smile easy and warm as he wrapped an arm around my waist. That night, Rachel proposed a toast. She raised her glass, the wine catching the light like liquid rubies. "To Olivia and Daniel," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "To a future filled with love, happiness, and everything you both deserve. I can't wait to stand by your side on your big day." Everyone cheered. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, a perfect little globe of happiness. I thought it was a tear of joy for my future. Looking back, maybe it was a premonition. Hindsight is a cruel editor, turning beautiful memories into annotated lists of red flags. I see it now, of course. The way her eyes lingered on Daniel a second too long. The way her questions to him were just a little too personal, a little too intimate for a first meeting. The way she'd touch his arm when she laughed at one of his jokes. At the time, I saw it as her being friendly, welcoming. Now I see it for what it was, reconnaissance. She wasn't welcoming him into the family. She was assessing the target. In the months that followed, she became my wedding planning shadow. The ultimate maid of honor, my mom called her. She was a whirlwind of energy and opinions. "Oh, Liv, that dress is lovely," she'd say, looking at my reflection in the bridal shop mirror. "But it's a bit safe, don't you think? You have a great figure. You should show it off more." I'd end up trying on dresses that were tighter, lower cut, dresses that didn't feel like me. When I found a rustic barn venue I adored, she wrinkled her nose. "It's a little dusty, isn't it? And think of the bugs. Daniel seems like more of a black tie, ballroom kind of guy." Every decision was subtly steered, every choice gently undermined. She framed it all as sisterly concern, as wanting the best for me. In reality, she was reshaping my wedding into one she would have wanted. And in the process, she was positioning herself as the one who truly understood Daniel. I remember one afternoon, we were addressing invitations. My hand was cramping, and I was stressing about the budget. Daniel was at work. Rachel came over with a bottle of expensive champagne. "Wedding planning fuel," she announced cheerily. After a couple of glasses, she sighed dramatically. "You know," she began, swirling the bubbles in her flute. "It's funny. Daniel was telling me the other day how stressed he's been feeling about all this. He said he's worried it's all getting too big, too fast." My stomach tightened. He said that to you?" She waved a dismissive hand, a masterful performance of nonchalance. "Oh, you know how guys are. They can't talk about their feelings with their fiancés without worrying they'll cause a panic. Sometimes they just need a neutral party to vent to. Don't worry, I told him he was being silly and that this is the happiest time of your life." She smiled, a perfect, reassuring mask. "I've got your back." I felt a surge of gratitude. How lucky was I to have a sister who could be a confidant for both of us. The thought that she was actively planting seeds of doubt, manufacturing a narrative of his anxiety, never once crossed my mind. She was building a secret bridge to him, and I was the one handing her the wood and nails. The break came 3 weeks before the wedding. The invitations were out. The deposits were paid. My dress was hanging in my closet, a beautiful, ghost-like promise. It was a Tuesday. I remember the specific, mundane details because the mind clings to normalcy when the world is tilting off its axis. I was making pasta. The water was just coming to a boil. Daniel came home from work and didn't kiss me hello. He just stood in the doorway of the kitchen, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. "We need to talk," he said. The 4 most terrifying words in the English language. The water bubbled on the stove. The scent of garlic and olive oil hung in the air. I turned off the burner, my hand shaking slightly. "Okay," I said, my voice small. "What's wrong?" He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at a spot on the floor, his jaw tight. "I can't do this, Olivia." "Can't do what?" I asked, a cold dread seeping into my bones, heavy and slow like river mud. "Can't do the pasta? I can order pizza." I was stalling, trying to rewind time with stupid, pointless words. "No," he said, finally looking up. His kind eyes were hollow. "The wedding. Us. I can't marry you." The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, my own heartbeat. It all just ceased. I felt my knees go weak, and I gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. What are you talking about? "Daniel, what happened? Is it the budget? Is it the guest list? We can fix it. Whatever it is, we can fix it." "It's not you, Olivia," he said, and the sheer, insulting cliché of it was like a slap in the face. "It's me. I don't feel ready. I'm suffocating. I thought this was what I wanted, but it's not. I'm so sorry." His apology was a whisper, a flimsy, pathetic shield against the hurricane of pain he had just unleashed. I begged. I cried. Asked him what I did wrong. I debased myself, stripping away every ounce of my pride, offering to change anything and everything if he would just stay. He just kept shaking his head, his face a mask of pity. That was the worst part. Not anger, not sadness. Just pity. Like he was looking at a wounded animal on the side of the road. He packed a bag that night and left. The silence in the apartment after the door clicked shut was a physical presence. It was heavy and suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. I slid down the kitchen cabinets and sat on the cold linoleum floor, the uncooked pasta still on the stove, and I shattered. The next few months were a blur of unimaginable pain. I made the calls, canceling the caterer, the florist, the venue, my voice a dead monotone as I repeated the phrase, "The wedding has been called off." Each call was a fresh stab of humiliation. Rachel, of course, was right there, playing the part of the grieving sister. She held me while I sobbed. She brought me tubs of ice cream and terrible romantic comedies. She badmouthed Daniel with a venom that seemed, at the time, fiercely loyal. "I never trusted him," she'd say, stroking my hair. "He had shifty eyes. You're too good for him, Liv. You'll see. This is a blessing in disguise." She was my rock, my confidant, my loving sister. The truth came out 2 months later. Not from her, of course.
She was far too skilled for that.
It came from an Instagram post. A mutual friend from our hometown had posted a gallery of photos from a weekend wine-tasting trip. And there, in the third picture, was Rachel. Her head was thrown back in laughter, her hand resting casually on Daniel's chest. He was looking down at her, not with the hollow pity he'd shown me, but with a look of unguarded adoration. It was the way he used to look at me. The caption was innocent. "Great weekend with great people." But the photo told the real story. Their body language was not that of two people offering each other platonic comfort. It was easy, familiar, intimate. It was the look of a couple. My phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor. A buzzing started in my ears, a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. I scrolled back through my memory, every supportive word from Rachel, every late-night talk, every hug, now replaying in my mind with a sickening new filter. He said he's worried it's all getting too big, too fast. Sometimes they just need a neutral party to vent to. I've got your back. She hadn't been my rock. She had been the hammer that broke me. She had comforted me with the same hands she used to touch him. She had whispered reassurances in my ear while laughing at me behind my back. He hadn't just left me. He had left me for her. And she had let me cry on her shoulder, knowing she was the reason for my tears. The grief I had felt before was a clean wound, a sharp, painful cut. This was different. This was poison. It was a deep, soul-level infection that turned my sadness into something dark and twisted. It was pure, unadulterated rage. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't call her, demanding an explanation. I knew I wouldn't get the truth. Only more lies, more manipulation. Instead, a terrifying calm washed over me. I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and pulled a suitcase from the top of the closet. The apartment, our hometown, my entire life, it was all a crime scene. A place of ghosts and betrayal. I couldn't heal there. I couldn't even breathe there. I packed my things, left a note for my landlord, and drove. I drove until the familiar small-town landscape dissolved into the sprawling, anonymous skyline of the city. I didn't just lose a fiancé that day. I lost the sister I thought I had. And in their place, a cold, hard resolve began to crystallize in the pit of my stomach. My old life was over. But my new one was just beginning. Part 2. Forging the Armor. The city was both a punishment and a sanctuary. It was loud, indifferent, and crushingly lonely. My first apartment was a shoebox on the 4th floor of a walk-up, with windows that looked out onto a brick wall and the constant serenade of sirens in the distance. The place smelled of old paint and someone else's curry. In the first few weeks, the silence of that tiny room was as deafening as the silence Daniel had left behind in our once shared home. There were nights I'd wake up, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I could still smell his cologne on the pillow next to me, only to realize it was just a phantom limb of a memory, a cruel trick of a grieving mind. The pain of the betrayal was a physical entity. It lived in my chest, a heavy, cold stone that made it hard to breathe. It was the first thing I felt in the morning, and the last thing I thought about before falling into a restless, dream-plagued sleep. I'd walk through the crowded city streets and feel completely invisible, a ghost haunting a life that wasn't my own. Every happy couple I saw holding hands sent a fresh jolt of acid through my veins. My parents' reaction had only deepened my isolation. When I finally called my mom, after weeks of silence, to tell her the real reason for the breakup, her response was weak, diluted by a lifetime of enabling Rachel's behavior. "Oh, Olivia, honey, are you sure?" she'd asked, her voice wavering. Rachel wouldn't. There must be a misunderstanding. You know how she is. She's impulsive. And Daniel was so heartbroken, maybe she was just comforting him, and things got confused.
She wanted to mediate.
She wanted to smooth things over, to pretend our family wasn't a fractured, ugly thing. She wanted me to forgive. But forgiveness is for mistakes, for accidents. This was a calculated demolition. I told her I needed space, hung up the phone, and didn't call back for a long, long time. I was truly on my own an island. And I realized, with a chilling clarity, that the only way off that island was to build a damn battleship. My work became my raft, then my ship, then my armor. I had a low-level marketing coordinator job at a mid-sized firm called Viridian Dynamics. It wasn't glamorous. My days were filled with spreadsheets, social media scheduling, and fetching coffee for people who barely knew my name.
But it was a lifeline.
It was a place where my name wasn't Poor Olivia or the Jilted Bride. It was just Olivia Johnson, the quiet girl in the corner cubicle. So I threw myself into it with the desperate energy of a drowning woman. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. The glow of my monitor became my only constant companion. While the rest of the city slept or partied, I was dissecting market analytics, rewriting copy, and creating presentations that were so meticulous, so well-researched, that my superiors had no choice but to notice. I took every project no one else wanted. The tedious data entry, the impossible-to-please clients, the last-minute crisis campaigns. Each task was a brick. Each completed project was another layer of mortar. I was building a wall around myself, not of stone, but of competence. Spite is a powerful fuel. Every time I felt like giving up, I would picture Rachel's triumphant, laughing face in that Instagram photo, and a fresh surge of adrenaline would flood my system. They thought I was the quiet, weak one, the poet. They had no idea I was forging a sword. There was one project in particular, the Vita Glow campaign. It was a new vitamin supplement launch, and the client was notoriously difficult. The previous project lead had quit mid-campaign. My boss, a stern but fair woman named Margaret, had offered it to the team with a sigh, expecting no takers. I raised my hand without hesitation. For 6 weeks, I lived and breathed Vita Glow. I slept an average of 4 hours a night. My diet consisted of stale coffee and protein bars I kept in my desk drawer. I found a flaw in our initial target demographic research, pulled 3 all-nighters creating a new strategy from scratch, and built a pitch deck that was, even I had to admit, brilliant. The day of the presentation, I walked into the boardroom feeling hollowed out but sharp. The clients, a group of stern-faced executives, sat with their arms crossed, ready to be disappointed. I walked them through my research, my strategy, my vision. I spoke with a confidence I didn't know I possessed. I answered their questions before they even had a chance to fully form them. When I finished, there was a long silence. My heart pounded against my ribs. Then, the CEO of Vita Glow, a man known for his brutal honesty, leaned forward. He smiled. A slow, genuine smile. "Ms. Johnson," he said, "that was the most impressive marketing pitch I've seen in a decade. We're in." Walking out of that boardroom was like emerging into the light after a long time in a dark tunnel. The praise from Margaret, the impressed looks from my colleagues, they were balms on a wound I thought would never heal. It was the first time in almost a year that I had felt a flicker of something other than pain or rage. It was pride. I had done this.
Me.
Olivia. Not as someone's fiancé, not as someone's sister. Just me. That success became a catalyst. More high-profile projects came my way. I was given more responsibility, a small team to manage. I started to build a reputation within the firm as the person who could turn impossible situations around. I was reliable, relentless, and ruthlessly efficient. The soft, romantic poet was gone, buried under layers of corporate strategy and professional excellence. In her place was a woman made of deadlines and determination. A year to the day after I'd left my hometown, Margaret called me into her office. It was the corner office, the one with the panoramic view of the city skyline. The same skyline that had once seemed so alien and intimidating now felt like my kingdom. "Olivia," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "I've been watching you this past year. Your work ethic is extraordinary. Your results speak for themselves. The Vitaglow campaign alone brought in a 30% increase in our quarterly revenue." She paused, folding her hands on her large oak desk. "The Director of Client Strategy position for the entire department is opening up. It's a major step. More pressure, more responsibility. I'm offering it to you." I stared at her, speechless.
Director.
An entire department. A year ago, I was crying on a kitchen floor. Now, I was being offered a seat at the table I never even thought I'd be invited to. I started, my voice catching. "Thank you, Margaret."
Yes.
"I accept." "I thought you might," she said with a knowing smile. "You've earned it. You'll be managing all the project leads, overseeing all major campaigns, and you'll have final say on new hires for the department. You start Monday." I walked out of her office in a daze. I went back to my own desk, no longer a cubicle but a small office with a door, and looked out the window. The city lights were beginning to flicker on as dusk settled, a sprawling galaxy of possibilities. I had done it. I had clawed my way out of the abyss, not by forgetting, but by forging my pain into fuel. The memory of Daniel and Rachel no longer felt like a hot, searing brand. It was a cold, hard stone in my gut, a permanent reminder of what I had survived. I was finally in control, or so I thought. I had no idea that the ghost I'd been running from was about to walk right through my new office door. Part 3. The Ghost at the Gate. The first Monday in my new role felt like breathing different air. It was crisp, thin, electric with a potential I hadn't felt before. My new office was spacious, minimalist, with a floor-to-ceiling window that made me feel like I was suspended over the city. The title on the door, Olivia Johnson, Director of Client Strategy, was a shield and a statement. It was a declaration of survival. My first week was a blur of meetings, handoffs, and getting acquainted with the new weight of my responsibilities. My calendar was a solid wall of colored blocks. I was in charge of a team of 12 people, multi-million-dollar accounts, and the strategic direction of the entire department. The frightened girl who had fled her hometown a year ago would never have recognized the woman I was becoming. I was decisive, authoritative, and I was good at my job. For the first time, my identity wasn't tied to a man or my family. It was mine, forged in fire and polished by pressure. The following Monday, an email landed in my inbox that would change everything. The subject line was innocuous. "New hire file for your approval, Project Manager." It was from HR. As a director, I had the final sign-off on anyone joining my department. I opened the attached PDF with a sense of routine, my mind already on the budget meeting I had in 30 minutes. I scanned the cover letter first. Bubbly, full of corporate buzzwords. Passionate self-starter, proven track record, eager to contribute to a dynamic team. Standard fare. I clicked over to the resume. And then I saw the name. Rachel Collins. The world went silent. The ambient hum of the office, the distant ringing of a phone, the clicking of my own mouse, it all faded into a dull, roaring vacuum. My blood didn't just freeze, it turned to ice water, a painful, shocking slush in my veins. My breath hitched in my chest. Collins. Of course. She had married him. A small, private ceremony I later heard through the grapevine. She'd taken his name, the name that should have been mine. The name I had practiced writing in the margins of my notebooks. I forced myself to read the resume. It was inflated, full of vague accomplishments at a small, no-name firm back in our hometown. She listed project management as a core skill, but the descriptions of her experience were thin, lacking any real metrics or substance. She had padded it, embellished it, just like she embellished every other aspect of her life. She was a master of surface-level charm, of creating an illusion of competence. And, apparently, it had been enough to get her through the initial HR screening. My first instinct was primal. Reject her. A single click. A polite, form letter email from HR. Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates. It would be easy.
Clean.
I could erase her from my professional life before she even entered it. I could keep my sanctuary sterile and safe. My finger hovered over the mouse. But then, a different thought began to form, cold and sharp as a shard of glass. Rejecting her was an act of fear. It was telling her she still had power over me, that her very presence was enough to make me run and hide. It was letting her win, again. I had spent a year building this fortress around myself, not brick by brick, but success by success. What was the point of a fortress if you were still afraid of the monster at the gate?
No.
Let her come. A slow, icy calm spread through me, displacing the panic. This wasn't a threat. This was an opportunity. A cosmic, once-in-a-lifetime gift wrapped in the packaging of my worst nightmare. She thought she was walking into a new job. She had no idea she was walking into my world. A world where I made the rules. I clicked approve and wrote back to HR. Looks fine. Please schedule her orientation and have her report to me on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. for her departmental onboarding. The next 2 days were an exercise in supreme self-control. I worked with mechanical focus, but a part of my mind was constantly running simulations, planning, preparing. I wasn't plotting a dramatic, movie-style revenge. I wasn't going to scream at her or expose her to our colleagues. That was her style. Loud, messy, emotional. Mine would be different. It would be cold, quiet, and utterly professional. It would be a death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one delivered with a polite, corporate smile. Thursday morning arrived, gray and overcast, the sky the color of slate. I dressed with unusual care, choosing a charcoal gray sheath dress, sharp heels, and pulling my hair back into a severe, elegant knot. I was putting on a uniform, a suit of armor. At 9:59 a.m., there was a knock on my door. Come in, I called, my voice perfectly even. The door opened and there she was, my sister. She looked different, yet exactly the same. She'd cut her hair into a stylish, expensive-looking bob. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than my first month's rent in the city. Her face was a mask of bright, confident charm, the same one she wore for the whole world. She was holding a new employee welcome packet and a branded Viridian Dynamics mug. She scanned the room, her eyes taking in the large desk, the expensive chair, the sprawling view. She was clearly impressed. Then her eyes landed on me, and her universe tilted. The confident smile faltered, freezing on her face. Her eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated shock. She looked from my face to the nameplate on my desk and back again. Olivia, she gasped, the name a puff of air. You work here? I leaned back in my high-backed leather chair, a slow, deliberate movement. I didn't smile, not really. I offered her a thin, cool line of my lips that was the business equivalent of a smile. I let the silence stretch, letting her stand there, off balance, the power dynamic of our entire lives reversing in the space of 10 seconds. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, measured, and utterly devoid of any personal recognition. Not just work here, I replied, my tone crisp and managerial. I run this department. And you, I see, are my new project manager. Welcome to Viridian, Ms. Collins. The color physically drained from her face. I watched it happen. The healthy, confident glow vanished, replaced by a pasty, sickly pallor. The fake charm evaporated, leaving behind a raw, stunned panic. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister completely, utterly unguarded. And she looked small. But how? She stammered, her composure shattered. I thought you were… I was busy, I said, cutting her off smoothly. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. Please have a seat. We have a lot to cover. She sank into the chair, her movements stiff and robotic. The confident woman who had strode in moments before was gone. In her place was a trespasser, an imposter who had just realized she'd broken into the home of the chief of police. I spent the next 30 minutes walking her through the departmental structure, the reporting protocols, and our key accounts, all in the same detached, professional monotone. I never once used her first name. She was Ms. Collins. I was Ms. Johnson. I laid out my expectations for her role: strict adherence to deadlines, meticulous attention to detail, and proactive communication. With every word, I was drawing a new boundary, establishing a new reality. The reality where I was in charge. As I spoke, I watched her. I saw the gears turning in her head, the dawning horror as she realized the full scope of her situation. Her past had just become her boss. The sister she had betrayed and discarded was now the woman who would approve her vacation days, sign off on her expense reports, and evaluate her performance. As the meeting concluded, I slid a thick file across the desk toward her. "This will be your first assignment," I said. "It's our most challenging account. Sterling Imports. The client is particular. They have very high expectations and a history of being dissatisfied with our work. The previous project manager couldn't handle it. I need someone to go in there and turn things around. I trust your resume wasn't exaggerating your skills." The challenge hung in the air, sharp and pointed. She stared at the file as if it were a venomous snake. The Sterling account was legendary in the office, a known career killer. Giving it to a new hire was like throwing them into the deep end of the pool with weights tied to their ankles. It was also a perfectly defensible business decision. I'm giving my new hire a challenging opportunity to prove herself. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. For a second, I saw the little sister I grew up with, the one who would look at me for help when she'd gotten in over her head. But that girl was gone, and the woman who replaced her deserved no help from me. I handed her the file, my face a perfect mask of managerial encouragement. "The first progress report is due on my desk by end of day Friday. Welcome to the team, Rachel. I have a feeling you're going to be a real asset." She took the file, her hand trembling slightly. She had no idea she was holding the architect's drawings for her own professional demolition. The game was on. Part 4. The Quiet Demolition. My revenge was not a single, explosive act. It was a slow, methodical erosion. It was the steady drip of water on stone, a process so gradual she couldn't pinpoint a single moment of attack, only the creeping, undeniable reality that she was crumbling. The office became my theater, and corporate procedure became my weapon. Rachel, now Miss Collins to everyone, tried to play the part. In her first week, she attempted to leverage our history to find a crack in my professional armor. She'd pop her head into my office with a breezy, "Hey, got a sec?" trying to reclaim the casual intimacy we once had. My response was always the same. I'd look up from my computer with an impassive expression and say, "Do you have a meeting scheduled on my calendar, Miss Collins? My time is fully booked today, but you can send an email to my assistant." The first time it happened, she recoiled as if stung. The second time, she flushed with anger. By the third time, she stopped trying. The message was clear. In this building, we were not sisters. We were not even acquaintances. I was her boss, and she was my subordinate. The nameplate on my door was a wall she could not breach. The Sterling Imports account was, as I knew it would be, her crucible. The client was demanding, the deadlines were aggressive, and the project required a level of strategic thinking and meticulous organization that Rachel simply did not possess. Her entire career, her entire life, had been built on charm and corner cutting. But you can't charm a balance sheet. You can't bullshit a project timeline that's falling apart. Her emails began to flood my inbox. They were panicked and rambling, full of questions that were clearly answered in the project brief I had given her. "Hi, Ms. Johnson. Quick question about the Q3 budget for Sterling. Just want to make sure I'm on the right track." Smiley face. My reply would be brief, professional, and unhelpful. "Ms. Collins, please refer to Section 4, Subsection B of the project charter you were provided during your onboarding. All budgetary guidelines are outlined there. I was forcing her to do the work, to stand on her own 2 feet, and I knew she couldn't. She was used to having someone else solve her problems. Her confidence, which had always been her greatest asset, began to visibly fray at the edges. The first major team meeting for the Sterling project was a masterclass in her incompetence. She stood at the front of the conference room, fumbling with the projector remote. Her presentation slides were a mess of clashing fonts and vague, buzzword-filled statements. When she tried to walk the team through her proposed strategy, it was clear she didn't have one. I let her flounder for a full 10 minutes. I watched as the other project managers, my seasoned and capable team, exchanged confused glances. The air in the room grew thick with awkwardness. Then I stepped in, not with anger, but with cool, surgical precision. "Miss Collins," I said, my voice cutting through her rambling. "Could you please go back to slide 4? You've projected a 15% increase in market penetration for the new product line, but you haven't cited any supporting data for that projection. What is that number based on?" She stared at me, her eyes wide like a deer in headlights. "Well, it's an optimistic but achievable goal based on industry trends." "Which industry trends?" I pressed, my tone even. "Can you show us the data? Did you conduct a competitive analysis? A SWOT analysis? What are the specific KPIs you'll be using to track progress toward that achievable goal?" She had nothing. She stammered, she deflected, but the entire room could see the truth. The Empress had no clothes. I wasn't attacking her. I was simply asking the standard professional questions that any director would ask of any project manager. But her foundation was so weak that the slightest pressure caused it to buckle. After that meeting, the office dynamic shifted. The initial whispers about the new hire being the director's sister died down. They were replaced by new whispers that the new hire was completely out of her depth. My team, loyal to competence above all else, began to distance themselves from her. No one wanted to be associated with the sinking ship. She became an island in the middle of a bustling open-plan office. Every failure was documented. Every missed deadline, every piece of negative client feedback, every incoherent report was noted, dated, and filed away. I started a formal performance improvement plan, a PIP, a standard HR procedure for underperforming employees. It was all by the book. Cold, impersonal, and irrefutable. I was building a case against her, not with gossip or accusations, but with her own record of failure. The news about Daniel came through a phone call with a mutual friend from back home, one of the few I still kept in touch with. "You'll never guess what happened," she said. "Daniel and Rachel split up. Apparently, she burned through most of his savings, and he got tired of her not wanting to work. He moved out last month." I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction. It was just a data point. The prize she had stolen from me had turned out to be hollow. Her great victory had dissolved into another one of her failures. It just confirmed what I already knew. Her entire life was a facade, and the rot was finally showing through the cracks. The final confrontation happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was packing up my briefcase, the city lights smearing and glittering through the rain-streaked window of my office. She was waiting for me by the elevators, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. Her expensive blazer was wrinkled, her perfect hair was limp. She looked defeated. "We need to talk," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "We have nothing to talk about, Miss Collins," I said, not breaking my stride. She followed me into the empty elevator, pressing the button to hold the doors. "Please, Olivia. Why are you doing this to me?" The use of my first name was a last, desperate attempt to appeal to a history I had already buried. The elevator door slid shut, encasing us in a small, silent box. "Doing what, exactly?" I asked, turning to face her. I kept my expression neutral. "I've given you a challenging account to help you grow. I've provided you with consistent, documented feedback on your performance. I am treating you exactly like I would any other employee who is failing to meet the basic requirements of their job." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're destroying me. You know I can't handle that client. You're setting me up to fail. Everyone in the office hates me. This isn't fair. What happened with Daniel, it was a mistake. I loved him. A bitter, humorless laugh almost escaped my lips. I held it back. Instead, I let the silence hang for a moment before I spoke, my voice low and cold as ice. No, you didn't love him. You loved winning. You can't stand it when someone else has something you want, so you take it. You took my confidence, my happiness, and my future. You did it with a smile on your face, and then you had the audacity to comfort me while I was grieving the wound you inflicted. I took a step closer, and for the first time, she flinched away from me. You think this is about Daniel?
This has never been about him.
This is about what you did to me. You stole something from me that wasn't yours. So, I'm just giving you back a taste of what you gave me. Not betrayal. Not deceit. Just humiliation. The quiet, creeping kind that makes you doubt your own worth. The kind you feel when you realize you are completely, utterly incompetent. The elevator pinged, signaling its arrival in the lobby. The doors slid open. Your performance improvement plan review is on Friday at 9 a.m. I said, my voice returning to its crisp, professional tone. I suggest you come prepared. I walked out into the gleaming, empty lobby, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. I didn't look back. Rachel lasted 3 more weeks. She didn't even make it to the PIP review. A resignation email appeared in my inbox one morning. It was short, bitter, and full of excuses. An hour later, she was gone, a small cardboard box of her belongings in her arms as she scurried past my office, her face turned away so I couldn't see her. I didn't need to. I could feel her shame from across the room. That night, I went home to my apartment. The view of the city skyline, once a symbol of my loneliness, now felt like a testament to my strength. I poured myself a single, expensive glass of red wine, the kind Daniel and I were supposed to have at our wedding, and stood by the window, watching the endless river of headlights below. A profound sense of quiet settled over me. The rage was gone. The bitterness had evaporated. The cold, hard stone in my gut had finally, after all this time, dissolved. I didn't feel triumphant or giddy. I just felt calm. My revenge was complete. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't exposed her secrets. I hadn't broken a single company rule. I had simply given her a stage, switched on the spotlight, and let the world see her for exactly what she was. I let her drown, not in my anger, but in the shallow, empty consequences of her own choices. And in doing so, I had finally, truly, taken my own life back. The best part wasn't her failure. It was the quiet, unshakable knowledge of my own success. And that was a victory no one could ever take from me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a loud explosion, but a quiet, calculated dismantling. It's about rewriting the narrative they tried to force on you and becoming the author of your own story, on your own terms. Justice, I've learned, isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's just about balance. What do you think? Was this justice served cold, or did it go too far? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you have a story about getting the last laugh, I'd love to read it. Don't forget to like this video if you found it satisfying, and subscribe for more stories of justice and sweet revenge. Until next time, remember to be the hero of your own story, not the victim in someone else's.